heard a stunning revelation about the President of the United States. The chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, one of the body's top leaders, has just declared the White House an adult daycare center. An adult daycare center. Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee said the president treats his office like a reality show, and he acts like he's doing The Apprentice or something. Senator Corker warned that the president's aggressive rhetoric against other countries could set the nation on the path to World War III. He also said, I know for a fact that every single day at the White House, it's a situation of trying to contain him. He said of the President of the United States, he concerns me. He would have to concern anyone who cares about our country. Senator Corker last week, by the way, told reporters it was his senior advisors, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Secretary of Defense James Mattis, Chief of Staff John Kelly, who were separating our country from chaos. President Trump tried to undermine the senior legislator in his usual fashion today. On Twitter, he wrote, Senator Bob Corker begged me to endorse him for re-election in Tennessee and didn't have the guts to run. And President also said he wanted to be Secretary of State. I said no thanks. Well, there's no evidence any of those words from the president are true. Corker's denied it all. Shortly after that tweet storm, by the way, Senator Corker responded, it's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. For more on this stark revelation, I'm joined by USA Today's Heidi Presbla, the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson, and the New York Times' Ken Vogel. Let's, in that order, your reaction. Is this revelation or what?
Well, I think that Corker is someone who knows what's going on, Chris, in those situation room meetings where Trump is having these responses to very serious issues, Iran, North Korea. And he, like everyone else who's in that room, is struggling between what do I do to inform the public about this very concerning behavior, balancing that against knowing that when you do inform the public, it only reinforces the behavior and increases the odds that he's going to go into one of these cycles of, unpredictable lashing out, which only makes the situation even worse and possibly even more dangerous when it comes to our foreign policy.
And we're talking about the President of the United States, the Chief Executive, the Commander-in-Chief, the leader of our country, and he's being described by the Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as someone who should be in a daycare center.
No, that's why this is a serious situation. I mean, this is, look, Bob Corker said what other officials have said in green rooms and private conversations. They say among themselves what aides will tell you. I mean, that this is not a stable, sober man who happens to now be President of the United States with that awesome responsibility and with that awesome power. And this notion that he described so well of officials having to contain him as if he were this sort of erratic, unpredictable force with that kind of power.
Well, the people watching right now, I want to give you a moment here because the people right now want to know what you think about this. I've read your column for tomorrow. You can't give it away yet. But there's certain sort of obvious necessities here. What do you do when you have this information? I closed the show with it tonight. Yeah. Once you've heard that the top senator in the foreign relations area says the guy's not really there, he's not really a grown-up, and what do you do about it? Ignore it or act on it? And how can you act on it?
Well, look,
if you're a politician,
you talk to people ask me, what do we do? Well, you don't sit around and wait for him to be impeached because I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's certainly a long shot.
Won't do it.
Right, they won't do it. It would have to be not a smoking gun, but a smoking bazooka, I think, for that to happen. People ask me about the 25th Amendment, which would let the Vice President and the Cabinet relieve the President of his duties. I think that's a fail-safe mechanism in case he literally starts howling at the moon, right? I mean that what you can do, look, we have a Congress. We have separation of powers. We have a Congress that can investigate, that can exercise oversight, that has the power of the purse, that can advise and consent. And those are the things that Congress needs to do.
You're talking, Gene, and you're a serious guy. You're talking about the president being put in a straitjacket, basically.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm talking about limits being established, and Congress, as the Constitution not only allows, but one could argue, as the Constitution intended, for Congress to be, to be strong. I think Congress has to take a different role.
Well, let's take a look at this. Let's go to Senator Corker. Suggested he was saying what other Republicans are thinking, as you said, in private. He told the New York Times, "Look, except for a few people, the vast majority of our caucus understands what we're dealing with here." I love the way he said this, what we're dealing with here. Of course, they understand the volatility that we're dealing with and the tremendous amount of work that it takes by people around the president to keep him in the middle of the road. Ken, this is talk. This is almost clinical discussion of the president of the United States by a senior senator.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he is calling out some of these other senators, Republican senators, maybe Republican members of Congress, other party leaders, to kind of put their money where their mouth is. It's true. As Gene says, they do say this privately. We've all heard it. But why aren't they saying it publicly? This is a little bit of a nudge in that direction. Additionally, I think it also gives cover for additional Republicans to peel off and defect when it comes to some of the key legislative items that Trump. They're already doing that. You're right. But as Mitch McConnell earlier today responding to this when asked about it in Kentucky, his response was to point out repeatedly that Bob Corker is on the Budget Committee, that he is on the Foreign Relations, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. These are two committees that are key to President Trump's already flailing agenda.
He didn't say a word against what Corker said.
That's right. He essentially affirmed it.
Okay, here, just to make that point, I'm sorry to hold you up, Heidi, because I know you're ready to go. This is an astounding conversation. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell backed his colleague today. Let's watch him do it.
Well, Senator Corker is a valued member of the Republican caucus in the Senate and a key player on the budget. We're going to be turning to the budget next week, and he'll be a big help in helping us get it passed.
See, that's how you talk if you're a senator. You avoid making a comment on what the guy... Exactly. He said the president's daffy, and he said, well, he's really an important member of the Senate. Okay? He didn't say the president wasn't daffy. He didn't say the president was daffy. He just said, this guy, we need him here.
Neither did anybody else. I mean, Corker professed to speak for the entire
He said
Senate.
Most of the Republican caucus.
Right, yeah. Most of the caucus. But the most important thing here, Chris, out of everything...
By the way, they can speak up now if they don't agree with him.
Sure.
I'm waiting to hear the crickets.
Come out and say,
who's out there saying, no, that's not true? I don't hear it.
Corker had a lot to say, okay, in this article, but the most important thing to me that he had to say, again, because he knows, is that he is telling us that when the president sends out these tweets saying there is no path for diplomacy, Rex, don't waste your time, this is not some kind of genius madman strategy. There's not a method here. Yeah. He's telling us this is just madness. There's not a method. There's not any broader strategy.
I'm just watching this, trying to watch the headlines go past like we all do. Some more in-depth than others. I'm looking at the headlines. And the headlines say to me, okay, he made a deal with Chuck and Nancy about DACA. Next thing we know, he didn't make a deal with Chuck and Nancy, although he did over Chinese. They made the deal, and then all of a sudden you got to do the wall, too. That's crazy talk. Yeah. And then he says, oh, we have a deal with the Iranians over their nuclear program. Oh, no, we don't have a deal over the nuclear. It's like, what can you trust from this guy in terms of sanity? Well, what can you trust in terms of, you just had a conversation with him, does it mean anything?
I mean, it's impulsive, and I think that's probably part of what motivated Corker to speak out the way he did. He had these conversations
impulsive
with Trump.
The kid throwing his toys out of the bassinet. You know, well, I mean, that's impulsive.
Corker's also calling him a liar here, and I think that's what prompted him. Trump is saying that Corker begged for his endorsement. Corker said, no, that's not right. In fact, we had 4 conversations in which Trump was asking me to run for re-election and promising his endorsement. That didn't happen.
Well, more cryptic threats from the president this weekend about North Korea, and that's dangerous. On Saturday, President Trump tweeted, presidents and their administrations have been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Agreements made and massive amounts of money paid hasn't worked. Agreements violated before the ink was dry, making fools of U.S. negotiators. Sorry, but only one thing will work. Yeah. What does that mean? He added today, our country has been unsuccessfully dealing with North Korea for 25 years, giving billions of dollars and getting nothing. Policy didn't work. The president also was asked this weekend about his relationship with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Here's what he said.
We have a very good relationship. We disagree in a couple of things. Sometimes I'd like him to be a little bit tougher, but other than that, we have a very good relationship.
What's he talking about, his dog Rex? I mean, I'm sorry, it's weird. He shouldn't be talking about his Secretary of State like he's a third party.
No, the whole thing is weird. And just remember what Heidi just said from the Corker interview. That Corker made clear this is not a strategy. This is not good cop, bad cop. This is, good cop, psycho cop or something. This is not a strategy. This is not.
Okay, here's the dangerous
tactical.
part. Here's the dangerous part. The real part. North Korea. Yeah. Nick Kristof from the New York Times just got back. We all read this column this week, and an amazing bit of reporting, not opinion. And he describes the situation in North Korea, which is right at the edge of war. Those people want to go to war. They think they can survive a nuclear war. They can destroy our country. This is how deluded they are. And they'll survive relatively unaffected. They believe that because they've been taught to believe it. If that country is really ready for war and Trump keeps up this drumbeat, where do we end up? How do we avoid a war?
Somebody going for a first strike. And they are not far from having the technology to do just that. And this administration is very aware of that. And that's why when someone like Corker comes out and tells us, no, this is not just some genius strategy to get China to crack down or to get all of these other neighboring countries to cut off trade, to pressure North Korea. No, this is just the president deliberately undermining diplomacy, deliberately undermining his Secretary of State. That should send a chill up the spine of every American.
And when he says only one thing will work.
Yeah, well, you know.
What's that say to the crazy guys over there?
Well, it says we should do it first, basically.
Yeah.
You know, he's talking about attacking us, and we should attack first. That's what it says. And I think we should all keep in mind, how does he start these tweet storms? Often, he's sitting there, you know, early in the morning watching Fox and Friends, and they say something, and then you can time the tweets and the attacks based on what he has just seen on Fox and Friends.
You know what?
And I mean, that's not a sane way to run a country.
And even if there were some strategy here on the North Korea point specifically, it's not working. Obviously, it's not. If we're escalating and getting to this point of, you know, approaching what appears to be a point of no return, no matter whether he was intending to play the sort of the madman strategy from Nixon or good cop, bad cop, it's not working.
And here we are 9 months in, and we have more than 3 years to go. And you raised the final point here, which you will raise in your column, I believe, tonight. And it'll be in the Washington Post and around the country tomorrow, which is what next do normal people do?
What do normal people do? I mean, and you know, my theory is that the one body we should be able to count on to do something to at least contain this is Congress. And if the Republican-led House and Senate won't do it, then clearly what people ought to do is work to elect a Congress that will.
Make a Congress make a decision to save the country. Thank you, Eugene. We heard a stunning revelation about the President of the United States. The chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, one of the body's top leaders, has just declared the White House an adult daycare center. An adult daycare center. Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee said the president treats his office like a reality show, and he acts like he's doing The Apprentice or something. Senator Corker warned that the president's aggressive rhetoric against other countries could set the nation on the path to World War III. He also said, I know for a fact that every single day at the White House, it's a situation of trying to contain him. He said of the President of the United States, he concerns me. Senator Bob Corker begged me to endorse him for re-election in Tennessee and didn't have the guts to run. And the President also said he wanted to be Secretary of State. I said, no, thanks. Well, there's no evidence any of those words from the President are true. Corker's denied it all. Shortly after that tweet storm, by the way, Senator Corker responded, it's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. For more on this stark revelation, I'm joined by USA Today's Heidi Presbla, the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson, and the New York Times' Ken Vogel. Let's, in that order, your reaction. Is this revelation or what?
Well,
I have to concern anyone who cares about our country. Senator Corker last week, by the way, told reporters it was his senior advisors, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Secretary of Defense James Mattis, Chief of Staff John Kelly, who were separating our country from chaos. President Trump tried to undermine the senior legislator in his usual fashion today. On Twitter, he wrote,